Hi, my name is Chris Holton Jablonski, and it is my great joy and privilege to serve you as your minister. This poem was given to me by a teacher of mine just as I was on my way across country to start seminary many years ago. It was the very end of a week-long workshop in the making of and then the walking of labyrinths, large ones like the one in Chartres Cathedral. She had watched me and other participants work and practice and had chosen a different poem for each of us after she had gotten to know us. As our time came to a close, she handed me a little wrapped scroll with these words on it. Tripping Over Joy by Hafiz. What is the difference between your experience of existence and that of a saint? The saint knows that the spiritual path is a sublime chess game with God, and that the beloved has just made a fantastic move, that the saint is now continually tripping over joy and bursting out in laughter and saying, I surrender. Whereas, my dear, I'm afraid you still think you have 1,000 serious moves. This was just the right message to receive as I started across the country to dive into my formation as a religious leader. I had a lot of faith then in my 1,000 serious moves. I thought I knew what I was headed for. I thought I knew what I needed to do, who I needed to become. But of course, like the poem says, my time in formation was more about surrender. More about surprise and becoming, more about relationships that I had no idea I would have because I didn't know what I didn't know. And this not knowing is very important. And it is a fertile and powerful place to be. One of the fascinating byproducts of ministry, of church work in general, and I suppose, but being in ministry, I end up doing a fair bit of church work, and so I'm in a lot of meetings, and so I have a lot of check-ins. And in checking in, there's this process of reflection, of asking how I am, and then sharing lots of how I am with different groups. And so I noticed early on in this strange time, I was sharing in these check-ins that not knowing was in some ways the hardest part. Not knowing how long this was going to be, not knowing how close this was going to come to my family, to our community, not knowing when and how we would return to in-person church, not knowing how you all are doing, not knowing when this challenging version of school will end for my children, not knowing what our summer will hold, just so much not knowing. And it is hard not to know. And all this not knowing reminded me of this Buddhist idea, don't know mind. In all sorts of Buddhist thought and practice, but especially in the Korean Zen school in which my beloved Lauren practices, don't know mind is a big deal. Her teacher, Jeff Kitsis from Empty Gate, explains it like this. The reason don't know is so important in our practice. Don't know is like a trap door which opens up and shakes us out of our ideas and beliefs. It's like a moment of stop. And in that moment, we can see, we can hear, we can taste. The immediacy of our experience can appear to us. Later, he says, the very first interview I have with students, I hand them a poem, an old Chinese poem which says, when you are born, where do you come from? When you die, where do you go? The most fundamental questions we don't know. And if we can accept our not knowing, then we open. He says formal Zen practice is very much just sitting down, focusing inward, asking, what am I? And observing. We practice so that we can perceive that we have a narrative to begin with, and we start to see that narrative. We start to see the feelings as they arise, and it becomes possible to deconstruct it and act in a different way. Begins with this openness. Begins with not knowing. Begins with this truth. I'm a planner. In pockets, really, but in my job, you need to plan. A mentor of mine once told me that by the time you get good at this, you're planning 18 months into the future. And in our little family, I'm the one who takes a swing at our summer plan, which is an intricate lattice of so many different camps and activities, some travel all together, some time in smaller groups, camping, road trips, some time here working, some open and unstructured time. And I begin this whole process really in November. And so I was pretty far along towards a plan when this new world order descended and it all turned to dust. And so it was a few weeks ago when I heard the news that remote learning was extended. What landed on me like a ton of bricks was that in some ways the news that May and June had been added to our very strange March and April was only compounded by the fact that June, July, and August are all part of this woven unknown. And for that matter, September and beyond, we just don't know. And I guess that might be, in some way, an opening. Because as much as I thought that I knew in February, turns out that I didn't. We don't know. And as I was writing these words, my daughter comes down the stairs. It's early. She settles into the couch for her morning graham cracker. She tells me that the days are getting longer. And she's right. The sun is out already. Our dog harumps down after her, slowly getting into gear herself. Some other shuffling and muffled voices come from upstairs. Birds sing outside. The sun is rising on another strange day. This is Shelter in Place by Reverend Gretchen Haley. There is enough space between us to hold all that you are carrying, all that you've been waking, wondering, worrying, or wearing out with confusion or attempts to control, trying to find some sense of normal. All of your irritability, your curiosity, your fragile sobriety, your numb disbelief, your loneliness, your exhaustion, your daily question, allergies or the virus, and your joy. We can hold that too. We can hold all of it here for this time and bless it. Here we will call each other just as we are, beloved. Here in this far apart space that is also close in, so much remains uncertain. With each passing breath, the ground is shifting. All we can say for sure is that we are caught in this tangled blessing of life, of grief and gratitude together. Like always, except more. With all the forces of spring and the spinning of earth, we are turning and becoming and beginning again. offering ourselves like the crocus flower, breaking through with a wild beauty, ready for whatever comes next. Dear First Church, so much remains uncertain, but now we know that we don't know. Now we begin this day and the next, open to what may come. Know that even as we don't know what lies ahead, know that you are held, that you are loved. Know that this knowing that we don't know is a good beginning. So much love to you all. Amen.